Improve Your CSA Scores, CSA standing for Compliance, Safety, and Accountability. We're really excited for our presentation today to kind of share our insights with you guys, maybe even learn some things or two from you as well as our participants. Just to kick things off, some friendly reminders. If you're watching, we encourage you to ask questions live via the Q&A button. So if you're looking at your Zoom menu, it should be down on this bottom bar somewhere. So it'll say Q&A, and we will address them at the end of this presentation. So if you ask a question and we're ignoring you, please don't worry. We're stockpiling it all until the very end, and then we'll have a conversation after the presenters have finished speaking. And if you're watching this recorded, please send your questions to support@gpsinsight.com. Make the subject line CSA Webinar Questions. Thank you so much. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce our speakers. We have Jill Macbeth. She's the owner-operator of Raven Transportation Safety Consulting. And we have Chuck Reed. He is the program manager, Fleet Telematics with MasTech. And we will go ahead and get started with Jill.
Hi. Can you see me?
Yeah, thanks for Jill. We'll go ahead and jump in.
All right, thanks so much. Before I get started, I want to thank Titan for inviting me to speak today. I really appreciate the opportunity to share some insights that I hope will help you navigate an audit or a compliance review with a little more confidence. My focus today is mainly on the Canadian system because that's where I work the most closely, but the concepts apply across North America. The audit principles and expectations are very similar in the US. Some of the terminology and some of the spelling may be a little different, but everything else is the same pretty much. In Canada, we've had electronic logging devices or ELDs since 2021. And I'm still surprised how many carriers struggle when it's time for a government NSC Standard 15 audit. My goal is to pass along some of the things that seem to catch carriers off guard. So hopefully you don't get caught by these same surprises. There isn't a lot of practical information available to carriers about what to expect during an NSC audit or what the auditor is actually looking for. Without a clear ELD interpretation guide from Transport Canada, the CCMTA, or the FMCSA, a lot of carriers are left guessing how to manage their data and what exactly they need to produce. Usually I meet my clients after they've already failed an audit or an investigation. My job is then to help them figure out what went wrong, develop solutions to pass follow-up audits, and tackle their action plan items. The thing is, 95% of carriers already have the tools and data they need inside their ELD system. What's missing is the vision to use that information properly. Too often, carriers set up their ELDs just enough to be compliant, but not enough to make the system work efficiently or save them time and money. Information is power. With telematics available today, not using that information to its full potential is like throwing money away. We have more data now than ever before, and every day there's more. Every second a commercial vehicle is operating, it's generating data from sensors, GPS, cameras, and internal systems. The driver generates data, the truck generates data, even roadside and traffic camera feeds data back into the system. And yet most of it sits unused until there's a serious incident, and suddenly everyone's scrambling to find it. If you look at the regular vehicle data, engine hours, speed, mileage, daily vehicle inspection reports, maintenance records, all of it has value. When you connect that information together, it can forecast repairs, plan vehicle life cycles, and even help manage capital cost. The biggest factor in compliance, safety, and accountability isn't technology. It's the ability to look at compliance holistically across the entire company, not just the safety department. Too many organizations operate in silos, maintenance over here, safety over there, dispatch somewhere else, each with different and sometimes competing priorities. Without collaboration between departments, gaps form in both policies and in practical safety. I've been into lots of companies that proudly talk about having a strong safety culture with posters on the walls and weekly toolbox talks. But when the audit comes, they can't produce maintenance records that meet internal requirements, or they're missing driver abstracts. Occupational health and safety isn't the same as transportation safety. The principles are similar, but the requirements can be very different. Preparing for an NSC Standard 15 audit is really the best way to identify those compliance gaps in your record keeping and record production systems. Next slide. Next slide. Now, every jurisdiction has regulations that deal with vicarious liability and due diligence. If there weren't rules assigning responsibility from drivers to carriers, then the government itself would be responsible for drivers' actions, and that just won't happen. Let's look at the Alberta wording. Vicarious liability. Section 144 of Alberta's Traffic Safety Act states, sub 2, with respect to a commercial vehicle, where a person other than the carrier responsible for the commercial vehicle carries out a related function in respect of that commercial vehicle, and as a result of carrying out that related function, this act is not complied with. That person and the carrier are jointly and severally liable for that non-compliance. Completely clear. And according to Part 4 of the Traffic Safety Act and Section 249 of the Criminal Code, a driver cannot operate a motor vehicle in a manner that is dangerous to the public. This means that a driver must not be driving if they are impaired according to the Traffic Safety Act. Next slide. The use of investigative forensic data has exploded in recent years because it can recreate events, establish timelines, and provide scientific proof that's easy to corroborate. It is now standard in criminal investigations. Insurance companies are under pressure to deny claims and limit liability in collisions. What better way than a spreadsheet that has all the data generated by the truck and the driver and all the camera footage and messages between the driver and the carrier? Insurance companies are going to start demanding telematics and camera data to determine liability before paying out claims. Take this a step further and add in enforcement tools like DriveWise that already receive data from passing vehicles. What if the driver's rods and vehicle ECM data was also sent ahead for review? Theoretically, your tickets could be emailed to you before the load was delivered. Now let's add in air tags from stolen vehicles and equipment. What if that air tag location data went to every weigh station with DriveWise and it was shared across the country? With predictive AI, that data could be used to target companies and routes involved in criminal enterprise. All the data is already here. It's just not all in one place. Next slide. So what is a compliance review or an audit? All jurisdictions in Canada and the US have mechanisms to review the overall compliance of commercial carriers. These reviews look at paperwork and forensic data, comparing them against a standard to measure performance. In Canada, we use the NSC Standard 15 as the audit benchmark. It specifies what records must be reviewed and how many samples required for a vehicle file. The UFM follows similar requirements for drug and alcohol testing. Next slide. They're also reviewed early to make sure they can start off on the right foot. Canada is not at the federal level, but 4 provinces do, and others are working on theirs. I like to use the restaurant example. You open a restaurant and everybody has food poisoning on opening day. You can't say, oh, I didn't know food had to be in the refrigerator. But in trucking, people try to say, well, we didn't know. These new carrier reviews and to catch problems early before they become habits. Next slide. So what is the inspector expecting? First and foremost, the auditor doesn't work for you. Don't assume that they're going to understand what your operation does or how it works. If the auditor does not have a truck transportation background, commonplace terminology or practices may not make sense to them. If something looks odd or unusual, write down why. Provide context, especially with hours of service and supporting documents. Your ELD has required functionality to add comments and annotations for edits, and I suggest you use them. Next slide. Most of the audit work happens before the auditor even arrives. They were going to request a list of drivers and vehicles along with hire dates and in-service dates. Those dates matter. They're benchmarks used to compare training, abstracts, and hours of service monitoring. The auditor will review your carrier profile, tickets, inspections, and collision information to ensure those events are properly documented. If a driver got a ticket within the audit sample timeframe, there had better be a complete driver file. A driver that quit a year ago should not have a valid ELD login and account. Even if the driver worked 2 weeks and quit, you need to have a complete driver file. Next slide. If a driver was hired May 1st, but didn't start driving until July, make a note of it and why. If your work is seasonal, watch your dates and intervals for vehicles. If a truck sat in the shop for 3 months getting decals, note that in the asset record. Your ELD has a place in the driver and vehicle asset notes to keep track of important dates and milestones. You never know who will need that information later. Context is everything. Without it, auditors only have inflexible regulations to go on. Next slide. Both Canada and the US have regulations for record production. Simply put, when they ask for something, you have to hand it over. If there's a collision or a fatality and police start asking questions, having that documentation ready is in your best interest, especially with social media. Any collision involving a commercial vehicle, fault is always speculated. Sometimes the car really is the problem. Next slide. It's 2025. Auditors expect digital readiness. No more boxes of paper to sift through, hours of service data, DVIRs. They live on the cloud, available 24/7. Not knowing how to generate reports for RODs or inspection by an auditor is a huge red flag. Be ready at any time, the same way you'd be ready for a tax audit. How should you get ready? Ask yourself some simple questions. If someone asked for proof of driver training, would you know where it is? Could you tell someone else where to find it? Because audits look across multiple areas, drivers, maintenance, hours of service, company policies, it's easy for records to get lost between departments. Start by listing all the required records, driver abstracts, vehicle inspections, RODs, and so on. Then figure out where each one lives. HR might have some, the shop has some, and compliance usually has the rest. Map it all out and bring those records together in one accessible place with privacy limits, of course. Next slide. Trust but verify. Trust but verify by reviewing your carrier profile regularly. Every inspection, ticket, and collision listed on there must have supporting documentation. There are drivers who think that if they pay a ticket, the employer will never find out. There should be no surprises on your carrier profile at audit time. Next slide. Now let's talk about your safety and maintenance programs. Not every jurisdiction requires a formal written program, but all require clear policies covering driver safety and vehicle maintenance. You need to show that you understand the regulations your businesses operate under. Your policies are essentially your contract with society and government, your commitment to what you're going to do. If you have a detailed orientation process, you need to prove it happens. If your program says a driver completes 2 weeks of training before driving, but one driver was driving the day after you hired them, you'll need to explain that. Next slide. Review your policies and intervals regularly, especially before an audit. If regulations change, make sure your policies reflect those updates. For example, in Alberta, carriers will soon have to provide a driver experience letter when a driver leaves. So create a policy for that and assign responsibility to the department or person in charge. Essentially, with this new regulation, the carrier is vouching for the driver. Would that be an HR function or a driver supervisor function? Who is best able to correctly judge the level of a driver's driving experience? And please, don't make your transportation policies impossible to find. If they're buried in a 7,000-page occupational health and safety manual, either extract them or create a page number guide. Don't expect an auditor to dig for them. Obstruction does not make auditors go away. Next slide. Driver files are next. Hire dates are critical. They drive compliance timelines. If a driver's annual abstract is dated May 1st, 2025, but you pull it on May 2nd, 2025, that's a violation. There is no close enough in audit scoring. A carrier must have proof of driver license validity, driver training, and ongoing hours of service monitoring. Driver abstracts are one of your strongest tools for limiting liability in the event of a compliance investigation. Next slide. Remember, license suspensions are electronic and happen instantly. No one physically turns in a card anymore. That means a driver could present a valid card but still be suspended. If that driver crashes, your only protection is documentation showing you verified a valid license before they drove. Set strict policies requiring immediate disclosure of license status changes and always pull an abstract before allowing a driver on the road. If you announce the company is pulling abstracts for all the drivers and a few drivers quit, that's probably why. Remember, a driver can be suspended for unpaid tickets or support payments, not just road problems. Next slide. Keep all inspection reports, violations, and training certificates in the corresponding file. If a driver gets a level 1 CSA inspection and the driver, truck, and trailer had violations, a copy of the report needs to be in each file, driver, truck, and trailer. You must be able to document, you know what is going on with your drivers. Next slide. All right, now vehicle maintenance. The foundation of your maintenance program is the in-service date, when the vehicle actually went to work. That date determines maintenance intervals and CBIPs. A carrier may have equipment with different maintenance interval schedules. Make a list of the intervals for all equipment. In your ELD vehicle asset information, record intervals and dates for the driver. Registration date doesn't mean much if the vehicle sat for months. Next slide. You need a written, scheduled maintenance program as required by most jurisdictions, and it must list every inspection item. Early in my career, I audited a carrier who built a maintenance and daily vehicle inspection system and forgot to include the fifth wheel components on its inspection checklist. They failed the audit and had to reprogram their software. Always double check what are required items. Next slide. Vehicle maintenance goes beyond oil changes. It includes registration plates, wheel retorques, technology integration, recalls, and coordination with insurance and regulators. A strong shop or service manager can make or break you in an audit. Next slide. Wheel separation. Wheel separation is a major liability. Document every retorque every single time, especially after wheels are removed or serviced. Drivers should note retorques in their DVIR remarks, and those records must be retained. Use your ELD messaging system to remind drivers to retorque. If you didn't write it down, it didn't happen. Next slide. In collisions where equipment failure may be a factor, brakes, tires, steering, your defense is documentation. You need to produce vehicle inspection certificates, CVIP records, retorque documentation, maintenance logs, and 6 months of daily vehicle inspection reports. In the ELD vehicle asset, record everything: oil change intervals, inspection intervals, gross axle weight ratings, tire sizes, and registered weights. The more information you give your drivers, the fewer the mistakes they'll make. And infrastructure strikes. There's really no excuse for them. Use your ELDs. Include vehicle height, weight, and length in both imperial and metric. Upload permits, CVIP certificates, and door sticker photos. Drivers must double check their permitted routes. Even if the route provided in the permit is wrong, it is still their responsibility if they hit a structure. In the future, AI, live GPS, traffic camera integration, and routing software will be used to prevent infrastructure strikes and avoid construction or traffic delays, optimizing routing. Until then, buy a steel tape and have the driver record the measurement in the ELD annotations. Next slide. Now, hours of service. This section carries the most weight in an audit because the consequences of hours of service are serious. Being over hours kills people. Missing a training certificate in a file doesn't. The fundamentals of hours of service did not change. ELDs just changed how the driver's time is recorded. That's it. In Canada, driving over 13 hours in a day or not having enough time off is still a violation. The US time rules also did not change, and the US actually added more exemptions from not having to use an ELD. What did change is accountability. Next slide. Before ELDs, drivers took most of the blame. Now carriers are equally responsible. ELDs transmit driver data in real time, alerting both the driver and the carrier before a driving cycle or limit is reached. If a driver is logged in with a co-driver and the same name and the same driver license number, the carrier knows about it. If a driver is in a fatal crash while over hours, the carrier will have a hard time explaining how that happened. Next slide. ELDs produce compliance and violation reports, including unassigned driving time. Carriers must review and document how each issue is addressed. When the Canadian Hours of Service was updated to add the ELDs and the technical standard, the term verify was added into the regulations. Non-compliance isn't just the driver's problem anymore. Failing to monitor and act on problems found in the driver's hours of service compliance will have a detrimental effect in your audit score. Next slide. Now what? After the compliance review or audit, you'll receive a report listing deficiencies and hours of service violations for each driver. You'll also get a scoring and a rating. Appeals are difficult, but possible. Because record production rules are strict, if you had the record, it should have been produced at the time of audit. Next slide. Always review your results. Auditors can make mistakes, and it's your right to ask for clarification. While it's never fun to have deficiencies identified, it's a valuable chance to fix gaps before they become larger issues. It is expected a carrier will immediately correct all deficiencies, and in particular before any follow-up review. A carrier that continues to operate without making an effort to correct violations faces a loss of operating privileges and fines. A carrier with poor safety ratings tend to have problems finding affordable insurance. Follow-up reviews. The saying is, once you're in the lobby of the DOT, you're already in jail. Depending on what's found, you may face a follow-up review either in person or remotely. You may need to submit a revised safety plan or proof that corrections were made. DOT audits are rarely one and done. Expect ongoing scrutiny that can be extensive. Next slide. Deficiencies must be corrected. Ask yourself, why did this violation happen? Was a record actually missing or not produced? Who is responsible for keeping that record? Are the requirements unclear? Do you have calendar reminders for due dates? I cannot tell you how many driver's abstracts are still attached to the initial email when the driver applied for the job, but can't be produced in an audit. Shared digital record keeping and strong policies solve most of these problems. Next slide. And to close, compliance isn't just about passing audits. It's about protecting people and running a professional operation. Every policy, every inspection is proof of your due diligence. Governments and insurers are making it worth your while. Safe companies get insurance discounts, and with programs like ACES, discounts on registration and permits. The technology and data are already in your hands. The challenge is using them consistently and intelligently. Audits shouldn't be feared. They're simply opportunities to confirm that your systems work the way they should. If you focus on accuracy, transparency, and proactive record management, you'll always be audit ready, and you'll be operating at the standard auditors want to see. Thanks again for Titan for having me, and thanks to all of you for the work you do keeping us safe.
Thank you, Jill. Super great. Really appreciate the insight shared. Before we jump over to Chuck, just want to remind everybody that if you have any questions, you're more than welcome to ask them. Down at the bottom of your screen should be a question and answer button or icon. We will get to those questions at the end after Chuck for our question and answer segment. So if you have some, we're not ignoring you. We will get to them. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce our second presenter, Chuck Reed. He's the program manager for Fleet Telematics for MasTec. Chuck, thanks for being here.
Oh, thank you, Miles. All right. Hello, everyone. I'm going to talk about the DriverEye system. I've been using this system for approximately 6 years. Right before COVID, we started with that. Next slide, please. So like many of you may be thinking, why do we need a safety camera? So some of the questions we ask ourselves is, do our drivers drive safe? Why are at fault MVAs occurring? Why are stationary objects being struck? How many have ever seen a video of a stationary object jump out in front of a vehicle? Not many. Why do our drivers have so many at fault MVAs on first movement? And do we need to equip our vehicles with more safety features? So this time of year, you may be adding vehicles to your fleet. There's additional safety features that come out. So the system will kind of give you an idea of what exactly is causing your incidents. And if you could look at the picture on the right, that's an iceberg. Everything, we can see everything above the water, but the system actually kind of shows us what lies beneath the water. So next slide, please. So what we discovered after we actually had the technology installed, the drivers develop bad habits after initial driver's test. You know, during the driver test, we're stopping completely at stop signs, we're obeying traffic's speed limits. But what we found out is that we all get complacent, and as we drive more and more, we tend to leave those develop bad habits. We also discovered that our drivers are not at fault all the time. So exoneration. If you look at the picture on the right, this is about 2 seconds before impact. We're looking through the windshield of a vehicle. Notice that that vehicle has the green light and the other vehicle has to be running the red light. The large green spike on the screen shows the point of impact. So this driver will be exonerated. Driver had green light, the other driver went through the red light, and there was impact. We also found out that drivers are not checking the surrounding area for hazards during the first movement. Some companies use cones, magnets. Basically, you want to do a circle of safety. With this technology, you can actually tell if the driver did their circle of safety. We've also found out drivers can't safely operate a vehicle and multitask. How many of us can safely drive a vehicle and eat a burrito? Not too many of us, right? Additional safety features do not guarantee less MVAs. I talked about the fleet department adding things. Some of those do not actually mean less MVAs. Next slide, please. So, popular question, do drivers trust the cameras? Initially, drivers did not want the driver camera installed. They thought that the company could spy in on them, listen live, but this system doesn't allow live look-ins, and also you cannot live listen. Drivers sometimes covered the inside camera. The picture on the right, the bottom picture is the inside view. Common item used is Vaseline. So when the Vaseline is placed on the inside lens, the AI technology can't work properly. Some even went to unplugged or cut wires. If you happen to work in the industry, telecommunications are electrical, some of these drivers know how to mess with wires, and they'll actually short the system out. So keep that in mind. But after some times, the drivers realized the driver on camera was beneficial. They had video proof for false accusations. Have a driver driving down the street, a customer calls in and said the driver put a rut in the yard. You pull the video and you can see that the driver did not drive on the customer's yard. The entire route is documented with video availability. So every minute that the vehicle's moving is being recorded. Drivers can initiate videos to be sent to a supervisor. A driver pulls up, has a certain job to do, and there's a locked gate. The driver can pull right up to that gate, hit a large button on the bottom of the camera, initiate a video, then call the supervisor and said, "Hey boss, look, the gate's locked. I can't complete my job." Threats to drivers were captured. So many times driving down the road, you get threatened. Well, video proof that you did not initiate it and it was true that you were threatened. And also please use videos as proof. When motor vehicle accidents happen, I have many times gotten a notification, recorded that actual video and sent it to the technician that was actually on site, and they could show the police what actually happened. Next slide, please. Okay. Did I skip one? Can you go back? Okay, perfect. Next slide, please. So what is a green zone score? There was a slide that I don't see, possibly, maybe it wasn't in here. So basically the system that we're talking about has a green zone score. All drivers start out with 1,000 points each day. And the green zone score basically summarized safe driver behavior down to a single number. The score is decreased when risky alerts are triggered, and the score is increased when drivers make good driving decisions. If we look at the picture on the right, you'll see that this driver has a score of 526. Obviously, it's 474 points lower than what they started with. If you can look at the total minutes analyzed for that period, it was 490. And you see 33% of those minutes were green. So that means green minutes. They were, everything was perfect. So that equates to about 161 minutes. This scorecard tells the coach or the manager that there were 59 alerts impacting the score, and the average following distance was 3.1 seconds behind. The system wants you to have 4 seconds. So anytime that's below 4 seconds, you will not be given a green minute. So some of those green minutes that we don't see there are because the driver was not following at that 4 seconds. And what's really great about the system is if you look below, it tells you what the driver's score could have been if they did not actually trigger those alerts. So one thing to remember about the system, it's algorithm based. So if you were to ask me how much is a speeding violation count against your score, I can't tell you that because everyone drives different amounts of times and everyone encounters different situations. Next slide, please. Okay, so you may be wondering how to build trust. How do you get drivers to trust you? You're going to provide a playbook. Many times drivers said, hey, what's the playbook for this system? I want to do everything right, but I need to know what the system looks for. So in that playbook, you're going to tell them how the system works. When is the system recording? What do the lights mean on the cameras? You're going to also talk about expectations. We expect the drivers to follow all applicable laws. You have a company logo on the side of your business. We expect you to drive professionally. We're also going to tell them that there are extra video that is captured. So videos are alerts that are triggered. That is kind of snipped off and sent to the system. But there's many, many minutes that are captured and available for download if needed. AI is still learning. So if you think of AI, it's still in its adolescent stages. And the system needs to know if it's wrong. The AI, that's why they have a reject options section there that you can press, and it actually sends a note and the AI is going to learn from that. We also have privacy mode activated on our system. And this basically, once the drivers know what the lights mean on the cameras, they'll know when that inside camera is off. The outside camera is always going to be on with ignition, but the inside camera does turn off and the microphone does turn off on the inside. We're going to talk about system scoring, the green zone score that I covered in the slide before. And we also want them to know that driver rewards good driving. It's not necessarily a negative system. Next slide, please. So how does the system help improve driver score? This system has 3 levels of coaching. The first level of coaching is called in-cab audio alerts. Some examples of that are please slow down, maintain safe distance, and driver distracted. Once a driver hears those in-cab audios, the expected result is that the drivers will repair their behavior. If that doesn't work, there's a second level of coaching. It's called virtual coachings. 3 videos from the previous week of the most severe risk alerts that were triggered are sent to the driver. The driver needs to watch all those videos and complete the virtual coachings. So if the first 2 steps do not work, there's a third level of coaching, and that's when managers get involved. They're going to have video examples. They're going to have a count of alerts that driver triggered for a predetermined amount of time, and they're going to sit the driver down, or could do remote these days, but they're going to talk about those and find out what the driver can do differently to improve those. Leadership's going to determine which alerts go into the coaching bucket. I think now there's over 20 alerts that the system looks for. Not all of those have to go into the coaching bucket, but the system will continue to look for those and clip those off and put them into a nice area for you to review. Alert counts will start out high in the beginning of the program. We're talking thousands of alerts. But as drivers learn those and as you coach, those alert counts will go down. That's when you know the system is working. There's several alert types. Some of the severity are moderate or severe. And what you need to do is work on a few at a time. Eventually, those alerts will go down. And when alerts start going down and driver scores starts going up, you're going to gradually adjust the alert sensitivity to keep challenging drivers. Next slide. So I heard this many times. I have a lot on my plate already. I don't have time to watch every driver. So just like drivers, the managers also need a playbook. They need the telematics manager to kind of explain to the system, help them understand what's important, what they can kind of look the other way, but what they really need to address. And a lot of that could be anything breaking against the law or maybe company policies. Of those, on that bubble sheet on the right-hand side there, you'll see the current kind of alerts that are being triggered. The larger the bubble, the more alerts. And for the two systems that I've managed, the speeding alerts, driver distractions, and following distance tend to be the highest alerts, and that's what we tend to work on first. Not all of those are scored the same. So again, when you're talking about the system, make sure the managers understand which is scored and which are not. You can also use the system's scheduled reports. You can get weekly, daily, weekly, or monthly reports sent to you, or any time in between, you can go in there and request that report to be sent to you. Also has a system of personalized notifications. Accidents, I use that all the time. High G-force, as soon as one of those happens, I get an alert. I can go in and find a video. Generally about 5 minutes behind in most cases. If you have trouble with certain drivers, you can set personalized notifications for that alert and that driver, and you'll be notified. But beware, remember the system looks for a lot of things. If you choose too many of these, you're going to get a lot of notifications. There's also geofences that you can set up. Geofences, for example, inside of a landfill where maybe dump trucks are using a hard braking to dislodge the load on their dump. You could set a geofence and say, hey, I don't want this to be counted as a hard braking. I currently, and the entire time I've used this system, I use a separate GPS system, and there are many advantages for doing that. The driver system does have a GPS, but you can't really get a lot of data from it, but it is a great backup GPS in case someone tampers with the actual GPS. We can also compare two to separate systems to make sure that one or the other is accurate. One thing I use the GPS for is if I get a supervisor that says, hey, this driver has 40 speeding events, but I can't see all the videos. That's because the system kind of toggles. I go into the GPS system and I pull a simple report for speeding violations, and I can send that to the driver. If they question any of them, then I can go into the driver system and request more videos as proof. The GPS system has more personalized notifications, scheduled maintenance on your vehicles, have a lot more access to diagnostic data, and you can also set up alerts and reminders. Next slide, please. And that's it, Miles. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. Really appreciate what was shared with us. I'm going to go ahead and invite our other panelists back for our question and answer segment. And just give us a little bit of time. We'll get things set up so that way we can answer your questions. First question we have is, how often should fleets conduct internal compliance audits? Jill, I believe you wanted to take that one.
Yeah, so in the Canadian regulation, drivers must have their supporting document to the carrier within 20 days, and audited rods with supporting documents are to be filed within 30 days. So the regulation states between 20 and 30 days, everything would be monitored, and any paperwork generated would be filed by the 30th day.
Awesome. Thank you. I have a question about safety. What are the most effective strategies for reducing preventable accidents? Adam, you want to jump in on that one?
Yeah, it's really interesting on this topic about how to prevent. And it's really one of the things that we look at, and I appreciate the customers like Tech who use our system, is really looking at the behaviors that lead into an accident, right? So, speeding, following distance, distracted driving, your actions around traffic signals, stop signs, um, drowsiness. Those are. I read a study recently where when you look at the number of accidents that happen, those attribute to about 85% of the habits that go into accidents. So if you can really have a system that actively monitors from a management perspective those habits, but also a corrective measure inside your cab, such as in-cab coaching, which reminds the driver to slow down, create space, put down the phone, maybe stop and refresh. All those things are really intuitive that instead of hoping that accidents don't happen or telling people don't get into an accident today, it's really, that stepping into changing some of the patterns that we have. And the patterns are creating space, anticipating. And those really tend to stack up very quickly on reducing preventable accidents.
Awesome. Thank you. And then the last question that we have, this one may be multiple people answering this one, but it says, how accurate is telematics data when defending against false claims? Chuck, I know you touched on this, but Adam, since you're still in the hot seat, we'll pass it to you. And Chuck, if you have any follow-ups, we'll send that your way.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I just got a note from one of our customers that used the GPS data. They had a claim of a low G-force event that happened. That could be maybe someone hit a bumper, maybe the stationary object that you talked about earlier, Chuck. But it went to court, and they were able to use the inertial sensors, the G-force on the vehicle, and the speed of the vehicle, and the location on the road to really determine that there was no possible way that that accident could have occurred. And it turns out afterwards that the eyewitness on the scene essentially told them what they thought happened versus what really happened. And in that case, telematics data was used and became very invaluable to that customer to say, there's what you thought you saw, what you believe you saw, and then the science. And sometimes it's a combination of those three. But having the science or the telematics data certainly is um, it's hard to defend, it's hard not to defend against, or it's hard to defend, against. So it's very valuable.
Uh, Chuck, I know you had touched on, adjusting sensors and stuff like that. Do you have any firsthand experience kind of agreeing with what Adam was sharing?
Sure, like Adam said on the actual picture I showed you, I know that that driver is going to be exonerated because prior to that, you have a large emblem on the side of your vehicle, right? Everybody saw that as a cash register. Now you have video that's the driver can definitely prove that they had the green light. The other driver had to run the red light. So that's just one perfect example. And I've known in the past, claims loves this system because they can just answer any accusations as denied, and they love denied, and they love sending screenshots and videos.
Awesome.
Telematics, nowadays with telematics, I mean, they put people in jail for murder based on telematics, right? They find criminals based on telematics. It's been proven over and over again. We use it all the time to prove things happen, because just because it says it on the screen doesn't mean that that's what actually happened.
Thank you for everybody for all of your responses. Thank you to everybody who asked a question for our question and answer segment. If any of you would like to find ways to make your fleet safer, exonerate your drivers, or just train them to be better, we'd encourage you to reach out to our team. If you're up in Canada, that's Titan GPS, and if you're here in the States, it's GPS Insight. Some of the best solutions out there, not to be biased, but we hope you'd agree, especially after this webinar. I want to give a special thanks to Jill, Chuck, and Adam for their participation, for their time, their knowledge, and experience shared with us. And again, thank you to everybody who attended or who is attending virtually. And we'll see you all at the next one. Thanks again, everybody.